What's up out there, everybody? It's Mike here with Sasquatch NHL. Thanks for dropping by the channel. Got to get my 2 cents in here before puck drop in the Stanley Cup Final. Going to give you a little bit of a preview of this series between the Vegas Golden Knights and the Florida Panthers. Neither team has ever won a Stanley Cup, so what do you know? We're going to get a first-time Cup winner this year. We're going to get to witness some franchise history one way or another. Vegas now their second trip to the Cup Final in 6 seasons. Just 6 seasons they've been in existence, and now to the Cup twice. Pretty amazing stuff. They lost the first time they were in the Cup against the Washington Capitals. Alexander Ovechkin captured his first Cup in his career. Pretty amazing stuff. Too bad for Vegas that year. Florida, on the other hand, their second trip in 29 seasons. So just appreciate how good you've got it here, Vegas fans. Getting to the Stanley Cup is not easy to do, and winning it is even harder. So I'm going to be asking a few questions throughout the video today. I'd love to hear from you guys down in the comments. The first question I want to ask you guys, and it's something we love doing here at Sasquatch NHL, especially over on the Twitter game day threads. I want to know who's going to score that first goal of the series, who's going to get the icebreaker to kick things off between the Golden Knights and the Panthers. So let me know right away who's scoring first. So as we get into this series, you've got the Florida Panthers. They're getting back to the Stanley Cup Final for the first time since 1996, when they were throwing plastic rats onto the ice whenever they would score goals to celebrate. It sounds bizarre. If you're a new fan, you may have heard of this. But of course, the history there with Scott Mellanby, the team captain, killed a rat in the locker room at the season opener with his stick, went out, scored 2 goals that night. And his teammate, goaltender at the time, John Van Beesbrook, coined the term the rat trick. So it carried forward all the way to the playoffs that year, 1996, and the fans were throwing rats, plastic rats. They would sell to the fans. They'd throw them down onto the ice every time the Florida Panthers would score. I still remember it to this day. Patrick Roy would have to kind of cower underneath of his net as all the rats came down during the Stanley Cup Final. So that was the last time they were there. It did result in an off-season rule change back then. Fans were no longer allowed to throw objects onto the ice, and so that still holds to this day. The Panthers were eventually swept by the Colorado Avalanche in the 96 final. That was also the year I got my driver's permit. So thank you, Florida Panthers, for making me feel old not even 5 minutes into my own video. I appreciate that. Thank you. But the Panthers, they've been waiting, they've been resting up. Everyone's been talking about rust. Can they shake off the rust? Can they find their legs? Will they have lost momentum? Can they pick up where they left off after beating the Hurricanes in the Eastern Conference Final? And we're about to find out. From the West, you've got the Vegas Golden Knights looking strong, handling the Dallas Stars in 6 games as they've secured another opportunity here to win Lord Stanley's Cup. This now trip number 2 to the Last Dance for Vegas. The last time they were there was 2018. That was their inaugural season, when they lost that series 4-1 to the Washington Capitals. This Vegas roster, quite a bit different than the last time they were there, but there are some holdovers still, 6 of them to be exact. William Karlsson, Jonathan Marchessault, William Carrier, Shea Theodore, Riley Smith, and Braden McNabb. So that recent memory for those guys of finishing just short will likely fuel some added desire to seize the moment, especially with that added firepower, this time with some superstars like Jack Eichel and Mark Stone that we'll talk about here shortly. So these two franchises are going to collide in the Stanley Cup Final here. It's all going to get kicked off Saturday evening, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. West Coast Time. You can tune in on TNT, TBS True TV, also with coverage Sportsnet, CBC in Canada. So it should be electric. I can't wait. Check out the schedule. Find a comfy spot on the couch. It's going to be a great series. Both of these teams are playing elite level hockey. It should be a great matchup. So let's kind of compare these two teams a little bit here. The Panthers, they just feel like that really sneaky, good team with incredible goaltending. They've been underestimated a bit as the wild card spot, the second wild card spot, that is. They didn't get as much hype from the media, it felt like, coming in as much as some of the other Eastern Conference teams did. But coming into this series, they've taken down a lot of those giants along the way in the East, and they did so utilizing a pretty good power play throughout the playoffs so far. They have the 6th ranked power play overall. None of the teams above them even remain. They're converting on 27.9% of their chances, so they'll definitely have an edge with the man advantage if they can get power plays from this stingy Vegas defense. The Panthers' penalty kill struggled a little bit in the first round against the Boston Bruins, but they came back in that series, and since that series concluded, they've only given up 4 power play goals after round 1. 2 of those goals came in the Eastern Conference Final against the Hurricanes, so the Panthers, at first, penalty kill-wise, it wasn't looking good. That's always the truth against the Boston Bruins, but they have found their groove shorthanded, so we'll see if they can keep that going. Special teams always huge in the Stanley Cup Final. Panthers also continued scoring clutch goals at clutch times. They're 6-0 in overtime in these playoffs. And going back to 2021, they've won 9 straight overtime games in the playoffs. Pretty incredible stuff. Some clutch moments for goals being scored by the Panthers. The Golden Knights, they've had the most dangerous and balanced attack in the playoffs, in my opinion. Multiple players with double digits. Now in the postseason, Eichel leads the way with 18 points, followed by Jonathan Marchessault with 17 points. That's 9 goals, 8 assists. You've got Barbashev with 15 points, Mark Stone, Carlson, Chandler Stevenson even up there on the board with 14 points. Smith, 11 points, 2 goals and 9 assists. So a lot of guys, a lot of depth to this Vegas Golden Knights squad. The other factor at play here is that the Vegas Golden Knights score most of their goals at even strength. They haven't been very good on the power play or the penalty kill. The good news on the penalty kill is that they don't take a lot of penalties, so they don't go shorthanded very often. But the power play, just 10 of 54, that's 18.5%. Not very good in the postseason so far. Bruce Cassidy is in his first season with the Vegas Golden Knights. Don't forget, Vegas, they completely missed the playoffs last year. A lot of injury issues. They couldn't get things figured out in time to make it into the playoffs. Pete DeBoer got fired. So a lot of change there in the offseason. But they're right back here, right back in it, and now in the Stanley Cup Final once again. And don't forget, Vegas has that transition game. I don't think that they lean on it as much as they used to, but it's definitely there, and they can utilize that at times. Something to keep an eye on. In general, it just feels like Vegas can impose their will at times against teams. They did it to Dallas. I thought throughout that series, they're very structured, disciplined. They bring layers and layers of offensive waves and defensive talent on the back end. They're going to have that continue. Maybe some question marks in goaltending. We'll talk about that department here in just a minute. So a really interesting setup here as we get into today's video update. We're going to talk a little bit about the numbers and break things down more in depth here as we go. But really glad to have you guys along, whether you're a new viewer or a returning viewer. Thanks for being here. Be sure to hit that like button on the video. It helps the video out, helps the channel grow as we go into the future. Got new content coming for you guys here throughout the summer, so stay tuned. So again, let's hear from you guys down in the comments. I want to know that first question I asked. Who's going to score the icebreaker in the series, that first goal to get things kicked off? But I also want to know who's going to win the Stanley Cup. How many games is it going to take? And who's going to be your Conn Smythe Trophy winner when all is said and done? Leave a comment down below, and I promise to respond to every single one of them. That's how we do things here at Sasquatch NHL. Thanks for being here. Let's talk about this year's Stanley Cup Final. Let's break down the numbers a bit and look at the path both of these teams took to get to the Stanley Cup Final. For Florida, it's pretty crazy to think that last year they won the President's Trophy and then met their demise in round 1. Like so many President's Trophy winners do, this year they flipped the script on Boston, sent them packing in 7 games, shocking the entire league. And the Panthers, again, they barely made the playoffs. They snuck in as the second wild card after some pretty amazing goaltending by Lions down the stretch. They finished just 1 point ahead of the Pittsburgh Penguins in the Eastern Conference. They went 42, 32, and 8. For 92 points, again, just sneaking in as the second wild card, and here they are in the Stanley Cup Final. The path in the playoffs so far, they took down the Boston Bruins in 7 games, winning that series in dramatic fashion, then went on to meet the Toronto Maple Leafs, who had just escaped the first round for the first time in 19 years. Everybody assumed Toronto was going to continue on their march, and the Panthers said no. No, you're not. It's our turn. Sorry, Toronto. You're going golfing for the summer. Then they moved on to the Eastern Conference Final. There's no way they'll beat the Hurricanes, right? Oh, they just swept them in the Eastern Conference Final. And then they get to take some time off on the beach, relax a little bit, practice, get ready, and finally meet the Vegas Golden Knights. The Golden Knights were the best in the West, 51-22-9, 111 points, rebounding from last year when they missed the playoffs and got Pete DeBoer fired, like I said. Bruce Cassidy took this team over as head coach. He's got them dialed in as they won the Western Conference 4-1 in the first round over the Winnipeg Jets, 4-2 over the Edmonton Oilers in round 2, taking out Connor McDavid and that high-flying offensive act in Edmonton. And then they go to the conference final. They take out the Dallas Stars 4-2. They absolutely crushed the Dallas Stars in Game 6 in a convincing blowout, securing their spot in the Stanley Cup Final. Jack Eichel for the Vegas Golden Knights has been everything that they hoped he would be in the playoffs. He's got 6 goals, 12 assists. That's 18 points to lead the team. One of my favorite players to watch, Jonathan Marchessault. He continues to be clutch in the playoffs for this Vegas team. 9 goals, 8 assists. That's 17 points for Marchie, a pretty balanced attack from him, and he's a lot of fun to watch. But the names keep coming for Vegas. You've got 16 different goal scorers on this Vegas squad through the playoffs, and 6 of those with 5 or more goals. So this isn't a one-trick pony, and Florida's going to have to work hard defensively, especially at even strength, or Vegas will eat them alive. I haven't even mentioned Mark Stone yet, and it's a great thing for Vegas fans because he doesn't have to do all the work and all the heavy lifting himself. He's got a lot of supporting cast now on this team, new stars that have arrived and have really stepped up and come through for the Golden Knights. Stone, still impressive though, 6 goals, 9 assists, 15 points for him. He's winning 50% of the faceoffs that he takes, always important in the playoffs, and always dangerous. You gotta love the goal celebrations that he brings and the emotion expressive Mark Stone always brings to the table. I love seeing that guy get excited. The Vegas Golden Knights are averaging just slightly more goals per game in the playoffs compared to the Panthers, 3.65 compared to 3.13, so pretty close there. They've allowed just barely fewer goals per game, and that's kind of surprising considering the goaltending that the Panthers are getting. But again, these are neck-and-neck statistics, 2.65 versus 2.69. So really shutting down some of the high-flying offenses in the Western Conference, like Edmonton we just talked about, and Dallas there in the Western Conference Final. Pretty impressive stuff. The Panthers are going to need to bring the attack, try to steal home ice advantage, I think, early in the series and not let go of it. But it won't be easy to do in the crazy Vegas atmosphere at the Fortress there, T-Mobile Arena. It will be rocking. And the Panthers are going to have to be ready to go and weather the storm early. Maybe some question marks come into play here with the goaltending department. Vegas dealing with some injuries from the onset of this playoff run and the onset of the regular season. Adin Hill in the playoffs suddenly had to get thrust into the spotlight, but a reminder that he's actually the 3rd goalie on the depth chart there for Vegas. Hill took over as the starter after Laurent Brossoit sustained that lower body injury in the 2nd round against the Oilers. Logan Thompson also out due to injury, so Adin Hill comes in and he's done great. They've also got Jonathan Quick, just in case, waiting in the wings. Robin Lehner, of course, out the entire season with hip surgery. So we'll keep an eye on Adin Hill and the health of the netminders for Vegas as we go. But Adin Hill, so far, pretty impressive, up to the task. He's been solid in net, a record of 7-3, 207 goals against average, and a .937 save percentage. That's actually slightly better goals against average than the leading Conn Smythe candidate, Sergei Bobrovsky, for Florida. For the Florida Panthers so far, really the story's been about embracing the underdog role despite being somewhat of a powerhouse considering all the talent on this team. They've played the longer series of the 2 teams remaining here, but more rest in the bank now that they got some days off, so everything kind of feels like it's going to reset a bit as we head into the Stanley Cup Final. For Florida, things start up front with Matthew Tkachuk, of course, the stud, the smooth skating agitator, chewing that mouth guard every shift along the way. He's got 9 goals, 12 assists, 21 points. 4 of those goals are game-winning goals, 3 of which are game winners in overtime. So just absolutely clutch goals coming from Matthew Tkachuk, who's making the most of his time so far in Florida after being traded there from Calgary, of course, during the last offseason. Somewhat similar to Vegas, the Panthers are very deep. They've got 15 different goal scorers on this squad through the playoffs, 6 different players with 10 or more points. Matthew Tkachuk, also the leader in points. Carter Verhaeghe, though, for me, this guy's been unreal. I love watching him play. He's got 6 goals, 9 assists, 15 points, 3 game winners for him as well in the playoffs. Always seems to be right place, right time, positionally sound player. He just has that ability to find the seams and to open the lanes up a little bit. Just a great player, a lot of fun to watch. But you've also got names like Sam Bennett, Alexander Barkov, Anthony Duclair. I could keep going if you'd like, but it's too long of a list to name them all. On the back end, you've got defender Brandon Montour, who's leaned on heavily and making contributions. He's got 6 goals, 3 assists, 9 points, 27.5 minutes of ice per game for this guy. That's the most on the team. A little bit younger there, Aaron Ekblad, 27 years old, on defense, playing pretty good hockey, coming into his prime as a defender. He's averaging 24.5 minutes per game. He's +8. And don't forget, Gustav Forsling also lights out on defense for the Cats. He's +9, just under 27 minutes a game for him as well. So these 3 guys on the blue line for Florida, heavily relied on. They set the tone. They're chewing up a lot of minutes defensively. Vegas might try to wear them down if they're smart and see what they can do, get into them in the corners, and really give them a tough time. As those minutes start to accumulate here, the rest definitely going to serve those 3 guys well going into the Stanley Cup Final. And of course, if you're evaluating these two teams on playoff beards, which I am not able to grow one very effectively, so I don't even try. But the winner for me in this category is Radko Gudas. He has one of the best out of the whole bunch for both teams. The guy's beard is just perfect. Great beard quality, in my opinion. Radko Gudas, you win everything if it were just in the beard department. Now, obviously, you can't tell the Florida Panthers playoff story without heaping large amounts of praise on Sergei Bobrovsky and the work he's done in net, following in the footsteps of the great John Van Beesbrook, powering the Cats to their second ever Stanley Cup Final appearance. Kind of crazy to think that just a few weeks ago, Bobrovsky wasn't even the starter in net at the beginning of the playoffs. Bobrovsky didn't appear until he got the call in Game 3 against Boston, replacing Alex Lyons. Lyons was a major reason that the Cats even got into the playoffs, by the way, but Bobrovsky comes in, flipped that series around after they were down 3-1 to the Bruins, and the rest is history up to this point. Bobrovsky now has an 11-2 win-loss record in the playoffs this year, 2.21 goals against average, .935 save percentage in 14 games. Probably the leading candidate for the Conn Smythe Trophy as MVP, in my opinion. He continues to repel high-quality, high-danger shots, just makes things look easy at times. He's got that incredible glove hand and just so adept in his crease moving laterally. Just completely slows the game down. We'll see if he can pick up where he left off against the Hurricanes, but he's rested up. He's ready to go. I think he can help push the Panthers to claim the ultimate prize in hockey. If we look back at the regular season head-to-head, these teams both played each other, both won one, lost one, so not a whole lot of information from that. But if we look at the playoff run so far for both of these teams, they both started round one from behind, came back and won that, and then they led their series along the way through rounds 2 and 3. We'll see who can jump out to an early start here in the Stanley Cup Final. Always important to grab that first win. Even more important for Florida if they can do so on the road and grab home ice advantage and see where they go from there. For Vegas, if they can continue strong head-to-head play at 5-on-5, even strength, continue to stay disciplined, avoid going shorthanded, I think they have what it takes to get this done. They've got the talent for sure. It's just a matter of staying out of the box and if their goaltending can hold up here through a 7-game series in the Stanley Cup Final. For Florida, look for them to keep riding those timely goals and clutch goals that they've been scoring. A strong possession game is very important, and they need to keep that going as well. Got to continue making noise with the man advantage. Make every opportunity count when you've got a power play. It's going to be very important because they won't get a lot of them here in the finals, I don't think. They'll need to keep working hard to create penalties and see if Vegas get them chasing a little bit in their own end to commit the penalties. But we'll see. I'll be surprised if there's a whole lot of power plays in this series. So you got to earn that power play time if you're going to get it. So let's hear from you guys down in the comments with your predictions. I want to know who's going to win the Stanley Cup, how many games is it going to take, who's going to score the first goal of the series, and who's going to be your Conn Smythe winner, the MVP of the playoffs. For me, my prediction, I'm taking the Florida Panthers in 6 games. Sergei Bobrovsky is going to be the Conn Smythe Trophy winner, and Mark Stone is going to score the first goal of the series at home in Vegas. Should be exciting. Can't wait. Also, just another quick note talking about power plays during the playoffs. This information coming from The Athletic, a couple of quotes here that I'll read. Also, some information from our friend Striatic, who contributes to the show every now and then. This first quote from The Athletic says, generally speaking, while the number of power plays goes up in the playoffs compared to regular season, it isn't even across games. The games that are more likely to see more penalty calls than in the regular season are the first 4 games of the first 2 rounds. In those 8 games, there are 3.5 power plays per team per contest, 17% more than the regular season on average. In the other 20 possible games in the playoffs, there are 2.8 power plays per game, 7% lower than the regular season. So as its series gets later on, you're probably not going to get a power play. That's just kind of how it goes. The whistles get put away later in the series, later in the rounds, and that's kind of what I think people bark about the most, is that it's called pretty tight up front, and then they put the whistles away. Our friend Striatic also adding on to this with information from this year compared to last year in the playoffs. Last year, they only had 2 teams with 19 penalty minutes per game. This year, we had 6. So the range kind of different this year compared to last. Also, last year had 4 teams under 10 penalty minutes per game, and this was exactly the same this year. So overall, Striatic's conclusion, it looks like the average per game has gone up, especially among top penalty-taking teams. But in general, penalties start to dwindle as series go on and as the rounds go on in the playoffs. So something to kind of think about. You might see power plays at the beginning of this Stanley Cup Final, but I'd be surprised if you see them at the end. So we'll see what happens here. I'm really looking forward to this series and puck drop here taking place Saturday, June 3rd, 8 p.m. East, 5 p.m. West. Can't wait to see what happens. Answer those questions for me down in the comments, you guys, and I'll respond. Who's going to be your Conn Smythe winner? Who's going to win the cup and how many games? And who's going to score the first goal of this series? Just a reminder before you go, hit that like button for me. I do appreciate the support, and we'll catch you again on another video update right here at Sasquatch NHL. Have a great day.